To join me on this panel, we have two great brands, e-commerce, and two great technology and online travel agency brands. First and foremost, Manjari Singhal from ClearTrip, Chief Growth and Business Officer. Manjari, please. And the other panelists we have from the world of e-commerce is Vikas Jalan, CEO Paytm Travel, and Vikas also manages all the consumer businesses at Paytm. Vikas. Next we have Rishi Raj Singh, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Business Officer for Corporate, as well as the Head of Middle East for Make My Trip. And last we have Anup Tiwari, Chief Commercial Officer, Interglobe Technology Quotient. All right, so let's begin with introduction. Vikas, we have you, so maybe begin with your introduction, but also talk about, I think, what everybody in the room would be interested in, since we have you from Paytm, is the major consumer categories that you have, the top consumer retail categories that you have, and then how travel pays out in the broader ecosystem of Paytm.
Hello. Okay. Thanks, Virendra. And I think introduction he has already done, so and it was visible. So I lead the Paytm travel business, and I also lead the consumer payments and the consumer categories for Paytm. People may not be aware. Obviously, here the folks may be aware, but a lot of times people also ask, Paytm does a travel business also. I still get a question like that at some times. So I'll try to demystify that a little bit here. So of course, Paytm is known for its payments, and we, the top three UPI players in the country, and we continue to drive that forward. Other than that, I think since you asked about consumer categories that we have, we have a plethora of services. So what we have been trying to do is try to make sure that whatever we are adding, it's in line with the consumer preferences that they have, right? So we used to have a lot of businesses, we kind of cut down a lot of them, and then we are focused on some core categories. Our business model is primarily acquiring consumers on payments, then engaging them with multiple other categories and levers on top of it, and then monetizing them further with financial services. So that's the value chain, if I may. And that remains our funnel, and that remains our core. So we still keep acquiring consumers on payments, and payments is a core category. But after that, we have started realizing that for monetization and other categories, we have to drive into some categories, drive a lot of engagement. So obviously, the more you open the app every day, is what is easier to make a decision on what categories will be going on, right? So, and in that order, the biggest is payments. The second, there is also we consider it as part of payments, but it is the bill payments and categories like recharges and bill payments. The second biggest category. We have transit, quite significantly big, and then we have, of course, travel, and then lending, and then credit businesses, right? So I think in that order, and they all. I think from acquisition, as I said, is payments, and then engagement is driven by these categories that I talked about, and which are also monetizable, right? And interestingly, when you are trying to figure out that, okay, can a train ticket consumer or a transit ticket consumer contribute to revenue, but you start realizing that yes, they can, and there are ways and means of how you want to monetize. So, but it gives you signals. So the strength for us is signals, and based on the signals that we are able to drive the monetization or engagement on the platform. So I think that's the crux of how we kind of operate.
Manjari, you come from ClearTrip. ClearTrip owned by Flipkart, Flipkart owned by Walmart, e-commerce DNA out and out. Again, the same question. How travel plays into the ecosystem of Flipkart, and how you guys at ClearTrip gets help being part of a much bigger ecosystem in Flipkart.
Thanks, Viren, for having me here. You've said multiple things, right? One is the overall e-commerce DNA itself and how that imbibes into the culture of ClearTrip. I think that itself, the way e-commerce runs really fast, helps us run really fast in the travel ecosystem. The biggest role I think Flipkart plays in our world is that, like Vikas also was mentioning, that you need to know the customer. With Flipkart and the 600 million people that come and transact on the platform, we know who does what and what are their preferences and how can we extract from each of them. And at the same time, provide them with more than one category that houses within Flipkart itself and allows them to stay inside Flipkart, which is the advantage that we have, that while there is a ClearTrip, there is also Flipkart Travel. that plays a role into monetizing the customer who comes on Flipkart while we develop this ecosystem of travel which is exclusive in ClearTrip. So better targeting, better servicing to customers. There is not just Flipkart, there is Myntra in our ecosystem as well. So we all co-depend on each other to provide the right insights to each one of them, and it's not like only ClearTrip being the smallest of the three leans on the other two. Travel is a very, very high involvement category, right? So there are multiple brands and categories that benefit from knowing that, and it is also a affluent category. So Flipkart and Myntra do lean on us to take advantage of that as well.
Rishi, you represent the largest OTA in the country, more than 50% market share of the OTA category. Manjri alluded to affluent traveler. You also have an ethos of premiumization while catering to the broader India. You are also pursuing the Indian outbound demand. And Middle East happened to be a large corridor for us, Southeast Asia. Those are also the two regions wherein you are growing significantly and you have made acquisitions. Yep. I'm opening it up a lot, but if you could cover those topics by way of introduction.
Okay. Firstly, we only do travel. So we are not dependent on anyone. We have to, fetch for travel and kind of only be a travel company. So I guess slightly simpler for us than the other two. And also your first chart. Your first chart looked out of my review deck saying that why did we miss target because of so many disruptions? Yeah. Okay. So I think we are very, very fortunate that we operate in this category. The category looks extremely northward. We've had a tough year because of some disruptions this year, impacted some months. But overall, I think India is poised to grow in this category. And for a couple of reasons, affluence in this country is going up. Right now, there are around 50 million households in this country that can afford to travel because, but 50 million is a very, very large number. That number every year we add around 10 million households to that affluent bucket. So India is getting more affluent. Secondly, a large part of our population is the so-called Gen Z, is a very overused word. But why it's an important consumer base is because when these guys are thinking about spending money, as they start to become first jobbers, some of them come from affluent families. Their number one use case is to spend on travel. Now, whether it's for social validation or connecting with people or connecting with the world, but for them, travel comes out as a number one use case. The oldest millennial right now is 28, but in 5 years' time, he's going to be 33, will be earning quite a lot with very, very entrenched behavior of travel. Then, I think thanks to Air India, Indigo, India is opening up. Okay, the world is becoming an oyster. India is quite well connected now. At times we don't realize it, but the number of direct flights going out of India, the number of visas where the number of countries where we have visa on arrival, that's increasing. Our passport is getting stronger. So all of this in the long term is going to aid travel. In fact, we are, as a percentage point of view, the largest number of aircraft addition in the next 5 years will happen in this country. So we are very fortunate that we feel very passionately about this category, very fortunate that we operate in this category. And also even today, maybe you will know it better, but our trains carry in Australia every single day. That's the kind of propensity and velocity we have as a country. Every 1 second, we add, every 2 seconds, every 2 seconds we add one new flight traveler. Nowhere in the world is it happening at that pace. So our bases are small, but I think we are a very, very exciting country. Another data point, just because we were doing some internal strategic work, the number of travelers outbound that originate from India are bigger than the number of travelers that originate from entire Southeast Asia. So that's the power of the Indian traveler. Very happy that we are here where we are.
Anoopji, before I come to you, on this slide, 2025 year of disruption, I do commercial due diligence. Among the 24 questions that we need to answer to, there are two main questions now, number one or number two, any order. Threat and opportunities by AI, and 2025 was a year of disruption. Yes. What 2026 holds for us. So what this slide tells us, throughout the year there have been disruptions, and if you see the domestic demand in Indian air travel, the resilience of that is very clearly palpable. It came down, and every time it came down, it came up even stronger. And then we had the October-November festive season, and then the small debacle in Indigo. But net-net, we hit a lifetime, and our average net-net is still 8-9% high. More importantly, for everyone in the room, if you look at the outbound chart, it throughout the 52 weeks of 2025, it either touched or it was above the 2024 trend line, meaning that we will hit a new record. We hit a new record in 2025, and we will continue to grow upwards.
Yeah. So when if you see this chart, it's a very interesting chart because you can look at this and say, there's so much disruption happening in travel. I see that this is the largest window. Next couple of years, we are going to grow on a base which was impacted by macro reasons not in our control. So, like you said, it shows the kind of resilience we have, and secondly, it shows that our bases are still so low that if you are in this world of travel, if you're an airline or an OTA or a travel agent, the like 27 or 26 will be great, fantastic years for us.
Anu, how do you see airlines doing in 26 and generally?
See, first of all, let me just quickly talk about me and what we do. We do whatever they don't do. So basically, we kind of power all the customers. Or customers are OTAs and travel agents. So we have a view from the tech perspective and the content perspective. On your question on the airline and the trend and all that, for last 25, 30 years, wherever I've seen the data, there were blips. You have September 11, then you have these crises around late 2000. Those blips will continue to happen. We had a couple of blips this year. But on a long term, the growth trajectory is, I will not even say linear, it's exponential. These incidences will keep on happening. First time, and I think last 5-6 years, I keep on discussing with my colleague, Mr. Parashus, who's got a huge airline depth of knowledge. It's the first time we are saddled with a situation where we are short of supply and we are not short of demand. No, some of the data were touched upon by my colleagues over here. There's a lot of latent and what you call latent energy. We have not even seen the potential. The potential is developing. We don't have any historical data to support ourselves. The data might help us analyze our business, but the real data is something which we all look forward to. We can't even project in actual numbers. We only have 7% people who have a passport in India. So talking about international, just imagine with all the visa regulations being simplified for Indians, the kind of demand we are probably going to enter into the next 10 years maybe. So overall, it's very bullish scenario for us. Travel will grow. We'll be having a situation of supply rather than a demand issue.
So Rishi, on this note, we have, so air accounts for half of the Indian travel market in dollar value. That's the reason why air is very important. Domestic air passengers are much higher in number, but international is where the value is. Now, since there are many offline traditional tour operators and travel advisors in this room, the reason why you are and will continue to remain relevant is if you would look on the international air side, the penetration is really low. It's the least penetrated category in India. But within that online penetration, OTAs rule the roost. Same goes for domestic. Domestic much higher penetrated, and India is a flunky market because it's LCC dominated but still largely distributed by OTAs because they were the category builders. However, international air and outbound growth is where all the eyes are set, and that is where you guys have a role to play, and OTAs will continue to play a role. Rishi, since you also were, because outside of the B2C categories, since you guys also do corporate and you guys also do your B2B, generally speaking, whatever the mode of distribution, and maybe you can also touch upon online versus offline, what do you see? As this market, we are about 33 million passengers this year, China was 155, so that is the 5-fold growth we are looking at.
And again, very great point that you mentioned about that, like there's an international opportunity, but I would say that and sorry, I'm going to throw a number, but yeah, we're a $71 billion travel spending economy. that's a huge number, a large part of our GDP, a large percentage of GDP, and only a part of India books travel online, and we're absolutely okay with it because there are use cases where you need human assistance, and there are families who need human assistance. So there is, and this market is, like you said, the market, and like you were saying, the market is going to grow. Demand is not a problem. Maybe we are supply constrained right now, and supply is also getting added. Like every year, our infrastructure is increasing. Also, people traveling both domestically and internationally. So the good news is there's room for growth for everyone. I mean, this is one market where universally all ships can rise. It's not about online versus offline. It is about online and offline. We have an offline business as well. I mean, we do packages. We have my partner through which we support the smaller travel agents with our content. We do MICE, which is completely offline. So I generally think, and even within offline, even within online. So we can be competitors, but the thing is, we are competing to ensure that the consumer wins finally. The consumer gets great pricing. The consumer gets great experience. All of us sitting in this room, we can all grow together and all grow uniformly over the next 10, 11 years. I mean, that's the nature of this category.
Actually, that's very interesting what Rishi says, right? If I may add, there are multiple, if you were to look at this from a consumer segment point of view, right, and where is growth coming from, and we were discussing how Gen Z, while abused, is a segment that's growing, and that probably will be online first. But at the same time, you do see a lot of these first-time travelers emerging out of the 50 plus and the 60 plus segment who need hand-holding, who need tours, which will be probably offline first. So if you were to divide what is growing into different segments of consumers and markets, there is, as Rishi said, room to grow for everybody. You just have to realize or maybe figure who are you solving from, or which channel can solve for whom better, and operate accordingly. Travel, I think the numbers, and if you were to compare it to e-commerce, and even if you were to compare it to probably the number of people who spend per se 1 lakh plus in a year, right? And that is the people very easily who can travel or take an international flight out. The number is humongous. The gap is humongous. You are talking roughly 80-90 million people who have that spending capacity, but who actually travel or who have actually passports to travel. That gap is huge. So room to grow for travel and for everybody within travel is humongous.
Right. So here, good point, and I do have a slide. I think we have 92 million passports and we have 33 million passengers and about 65-70 million trips a year outbound. But since I have all the online intermediaries on the stage, air forms a big part of the GBV, and you guys comes in from the offline world. Beyond air, there is a non-air category beginning with the hotel category, followed by the ground categories, and the two e-commerce players, historically have been really good in having that foot in the door in the ground transportation category and cross-cultivating that. So we have broken down all the 4 travel categories here. The 2 in the red and maroon are the 2 ground categories, 40% intercity bus, 60% rail. But just how does this cross-cultivation of, because travel can be point to point, somebody can come and book a hotel or an airline, or otherwise, since you have a gestation period, once the airline is booked, you can do more things with the same customer. How do you cross-cultivate and engage the same user to do more? Maybe beginning with you, Vikas.
Sure. Yeah. Interestingly, if I think, so again, the example that I was giving, the probability, any business is driven by 2 factors, right? That what is the demand and what is the ticket size, right? So let's say, in that proportion, like what are the use cases, what I mean by demand? Like what are the use cases and what are the ticket size? So when I was saying about payments, when they became the biggest funnel, they are the topmost category driving. Then obviously we said about, earlier we used to talk about e-commerce, now certainly quick commerce has come in between, so because that makes you open more and stuff like that. Then you have e-commerce, then you have travel. Within travel, when you talk about the majority, and when you build that pyramid, right, the majority you will see is actually on the ground transportation side. And if you start it, if you take, I think after, actually I miss saying, after payments, the biggest use case is transit. Because you will at least open the app twice in a day, right? And that is what drives, and that is what you will see in the numbers, China or anywhere you go. That's where the actual growth has happened. So from our point of view and from travel point of view, obviously the bottom of the pyramid is if we just keep travel and keep transit out for that period, the trains become the biggest bottom, like the bottom pyramid part. Then you have the bus and so on and so forth. People wouldn't know, but because we had so much of synergies between payments, because it was opening and doing a transaction, trains became like we were the biggest after IRCTC at some point of time, and then there were a competition merger, and then they became the biggest, and then we are still the second biggest OTA for doing trains ticketing in India. In bus, because it's the second value level, right? Where you're now, so obviously the demand is lesser, but it's a high margin, and then there is a Gen Z and all that overlap which user base gives. So bus we became again the second biggest. It is unstructured data, so it is not confirmed. So people will claim for their own things, but yeah. So I don't want to get into that debate, but that is the, so we can we assume we are the second biggest player there, and then you have the flights and so on and so forth. So I think now coming to the part of the question that how much of overlap happens. See, it is gradual. Everything grows from one category to the other. Once you get comfort within one category, then people will try to say, oh, I used to book trains here, let me book bus also one time. Overlap, you will not see. See, the customer cohorts are very different. A flight user may be okay to take a train, but may not be okay to take a bus. A bus user is a bus user because they are, of course, they may have a slight overlap with flight, again, depending on the kind of cohort. So you will, I'm sure everybody will have their own data. The overlap can vary from 15% to 30-35% is the kind of overlap we see. But the trust building that happens with one category is most important. Then you don't switch to other platform. Then you are trying to stick to the same platform and all that. Now on the flight business, I just want to give one more anecdote from the demand. I know everybody is saying that, okay, there is growth and all that. If you see just basic national level numbers also, the demand for flights is going to go through the roof. Supply and all, everybody talked about. But, like US has a 350 million population, and the number of flyers there are about close to 1 billion. So it is a 3x ratio. China has about 1.4 billion population. The flyers are almost the same. So they are like 1x ratio. In India, we have less than 300 million passengers and we have a 1.45 billion population. So it is not even, it is 1/6. So the upside that you have is like crazy. So in flights will still drive the majority of the GVV or transaction value. But I think the bottom of the pyramid is also growing so fast. It is only about our limitations that now with new things that are happening on IRCTC side and the new trains, I think the flight consumers and all that, the little more premium consumers are also switching to trains and all that. So I think that transition is anyways happening and it is going to further happen down the line.
I'll just add on to what Vikas said, that 90% of our population stays in a 100-kilometer radius to an airport. So if you think like that, India should be very connected within that anywhere, like anywhere to anywhere. If you have to go to India, like go within India, it should seem very possible. In reality, if you have to plan a trip from say Madurai to Kashmir, it requires a lot of planning because the journey will break multiple times. So I think one of the solves at least that we are thinking that we can do is that how do you aid multimodal discovery? That wherever you're starting, wherever you're ending, whatever is the leanest way, and leanest can be in terms of time taken or money spent. Can you optimize it for a traveler to discover that, okay, you can go from X to Y, taking multiple routes which are stitched together. So I also think that there's this big opportunity for all of us to ensure that our travelers are able to, and going outbound even more, but even going India and discovering India, we can use multiple formats of transfer to kind of build an itinerary. And again, like the point that Vikas said that, and it means different for different consumers and also different trip occasions. Like if you're doing a BFR trip, you've kind of planned your Diwali, you can actually take a train. If you're doing an instant business trip or a leisure trip, so things also change upon which mod and which income class are you from. So there's a lot of variation, but ultimately, I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space as well. Because if you make discovery easier, people tend to take a trip. I mean, if you think, oh yeah, going from here to Leh is super difficult versus a flight out, your propensity to take a trip goes up dramatically, especially if it's leisure and out of pocket.
I truly agree with that, if I may add, right? The other opportunity lies in how do you get users to upgrade from being train users to probably a first-time air user, right? And the point being that usually you're used to booking a train, but if you so happen to realize that the price gap between the train ticket and the flight ticket is not too much, you would upgrade. So how do you provide such access and discoveries for the user to be able to make that choice and not stick to the stated behavior that they have been used to in the past? I think is another opportunity where you can probably get a user to move in up the chain from, let's say, a bus to a train and a flight, or multimodal, as Rishi said, saying that, okay, my end destination is somewhere, can I start with the bus, then train, and then finally fly?
Is there any qualitative guidance on this cross cultivation or providing alternatives? The success rate, is it 10%, 20%? How many times it happens? Because I know it's very difficult to quantify.
It is very difficult to quantify, but as a user, like if you were to just look at Google, right, and you are wanting, so most of us are used to taking the route by car, and that is what we rely on. But if you were to look at an average, a user who's using public transport, they do it beautifully. They have interconnected bus, metro, auto, everything, and that is the beauty of being multimodal. So, very tough to quantify what is that behavior today, but is the need existing 100%?
Anupji, I wanted to come to you because we are talking about airline, and what we have on screen is, in India we have two carriers who have a duopoly. More than 90% of the capacity serviced by these two carriers. But more to the point that we have the supply that we have, and we are in a scenario wherein we are demand-driven supply constraint. Because you lead technology, how does technology comes to avail in enabling the intermediaries to do more with the same set of supply?
And that's a good problem and a great opportunity for us. These numbers, we have 3-4 major carriers, and Indigo, obviously market leader because they have a long-term plan, and they have sorted out the fleet supply pretty well. So is Air India now, and I think others, Akasa and SpiceJet, they will also sort their fleet issue. I think these numbers can be much more if there is an aircraft which is available, right? There's a huge backlog of orders. The demand placement, the aircraft orders from Indigo and Air India is running up till 2032.
Correct.
Right? And Akasa has been forever waiting for their supply from Boeing. So we have to look at what we have got. And from our perspective as Travelport GDS, we will be responsible for providing content and technology, supporting it. And we were talking about multimodal transport bit and all that. A lot to do for effective distribution. We are into distribution business, all of us, and we are a B2B. I think they are customer facing. A lot to do with if we have an easy way of generating a supply line for our customers. And if we can solve those problems, we can probably harmonize multimodal transport, one. Can we make a booking process easy? Can we do an effective merchandise by effectively informing what is the product which each airline, each bus, each train is going to offer? Basically to empower customers to take a call with a confidence. And 2 or 3 areas where we really concentrate upon, and we talk about tech, we talk about AI and everything, but the most important part, and I think all of them will agree, is the contracting part. As a credible supplier, we need to have assurance to the customer that if you have dealt with us, the supply is done, right? The package or whatever they have sought after is guaranteed. There won't be any miss outs in hotels. There won't be any issue at the check-in counter at the airport. The transport will be there at the airport, transport will be there at the hotel. So basically, our job is to ensure that this is seamless, this is guaranteed. GDS, and through our continuous development, having local technologies, has been into do whatever we can deliver without zero error. For example, one of the large OTAs, B2B OTA, now online agents are everybody today. They are the largest in terms of hotel booking. But for every hotel booking they do, there is a back office which calls up every hotel which they have booked manually. So that is where the contracting and the credibility comes in. If we are able to solve that problem as tech provider and they too, I think this will go a long way to help this demand grow further. And better visibility, people should be able to take their travel decisions in a very easy way, without any nervousness about visas, hoga ki nahi hoga, that whether my connections will work out, whether my transit will be too much. There's so many questions we need to simplify. If we are able to handle that, and this is what we can do, we cannot change the supply chain, right? That is what it is. Only thing we can do is to look within, keep on simplifying the travel process, help potential travelers take decisions in a very informed way, and of course with the assurance that whatever they have purchased is guaranteed.
Yeah. If I may add to that, I think in the earlier slide that you were showing about the online penetration, one of the slides, I think this is very, very critical. The content is the king. And if we don't, so basically why the penetration on the was international 25% and then here 73% online. I think the reason is that because people are not able to rely on a platform completely, right? They have lack of trust or secure, like safety issues or all that. And as you were saying, even a OT or whatever, the B2B player is making every call to confirm the reservation, right? So it's crazy, right? So that much of apprehension people have. So I think the day we are able to solve this content, so people, I don't think people need, I think for travel to succeed, people need human availability, not human dependency. If I get that comfort that, okay, I can call a person when I'm on travel or somewhere and there will be somebody, if I get stuck into some problem, they'll be able to solve, then they don't need this. So they are trying to highly optimize on the part that since I will not have, then let me do everything from human dependency. I will solve it through them. Okay, I can always call this person because I know this person lives next to my house or whatever. Then I think the day we are able to solve that, specifically on the international side, you will see a huge, and that shift is happening, by the way, right? The more and more availability and more about the content coming and the clarity of the content coming and the confidence that people have in this, in our platforms and other platforms, I think it'll automatically happen and the growth will just skyrocket. So there is no doubt that it'll not happen.
Absolutely, and actually, even more and not less, the success of travel is actually so much dependent upon platforms like Travelport because A, the accuracy of content, secondly also like this entire thing of discovering around travel. I mean, what can we tell the consumer about the airport? At which gate? What is it like? Is the flight delayed? What is the kind of aircraft? I mean, so there's far more we can do to aid that customer's delivery. And secondly, and very, very importantly, that post sale is extremely important. Now, whether the guy is booked online, offline, doesn't really matter. What he needs is that if I get stuck at an airport, my flight gets cancelled, or I have an emergency, on real time, can we help him change his travel, give him the flexibility, give him the reach, give him the assurance. And that can only be solved via technology. It cannot be solved by that way of calling the hotel and saying, "Kya aapka kamara book kiya hai ki nahi kiya?" So I think supply tech has a huge role to play in the future, even more.
Though very quickly, what we have on this slide, this is the whole India, right? The level of penetration. And we have domestic air in blue, and then all the other categories, the two categories of hotel and alternate accommodation and international air right at the bottom. That's the runway for growth, So OTAs have a high moat. Once you drive somebody online, OTAs tend to have a higher market share. Only 20% is because of higher CTC in the rail category. But there still is a long runway to grow, and India traditionally still is, outside of the metro, is a very different India. Since we are at OTM and we are talking a lot about outbound and destinations, in my previous panel we had few people from Southeast Asia and from Cayman Islands. So I quickly, what I see here is a very resilient and persistent outbound demand. We again made a lifetime high in 2026. On the right, India travels 65% of India travels within 6 hours of air travel distance, the Middle Eastern and the Southeast Asian corridor. What is interesting there is we are at 2,800 per capita GDP as compared to China, right? So we are growing, and as we grow, travel will grow more because we have a very young country and very, very aspirational. The interesting part is we have 92 million passports active. You only get a passport when you intend to travel or when you're already traveling, right? So there you have the 3 times growth opportunity as you see it, right? And as you know, so Central Asia has opened up and that has picked up in a big way. Vietnam is another case study. So maybe a quick chipping in from each of you in terms of what you have seen in your customer base in terms of the growth in the outbound. Beginning with you, Rishi.
Okay. Bill, like a long story short, but I'll tell a very short story. This weekend I took an Uber, a longish Uber ride. The guy came and picked me up, and like when he came, he spoke in a very nice like call center type English, saying that
Nice.
where are you? I'm here, because so I was very curious to know what was he doing. Young guy, 20, 26, 25 maybe. So I asked him like, how's your accent so clear? He said, I used to work for hospitality, and then I figured out that like Uber maybe works out more for me because I enjoy driving and I earn more. And then he asked me, what do you do? So I told him I work for Make My Trip. So he said, when are you going to make my trip? He said, my this year's dream. He's a 27, 26 years guy, old guy. His birthday is in August. He's saying this August, I have planned to visit my dream destination, which is Switzerland. 70-80% I've already saved. Next 30, how can you help? So I said, yeah, when your travel comes, I'll help you with a coupon and all. But the interesting story is that look at the aspiration levels in India. Like, for whatever reason, this guy is driving an Uber, earning his daily bread, but saving not for buying a car, home, or anything else. He's saving for that dream trip to Switzerland, and he's just 27. So that's the possibilities, that's the possibility of India, and that's the new India. So I think this number we'll be shocked to see when we sit in the OTM maybe 2 years from now. I think this number is going to be double, if not more. Yeah, but the important thing for us is that we have to ensure that we just don't lose so much revenue to international destinations. We also help consumers to discover India because India itself is great.
So a quick one word, because the guy was 70% there and 30% short. The buy now, pay later, or the access to capital, that's what we need to bridge the gap.
So just today morning, I was discussing with one of the large banks in India about the possibility of travel. I was telling them the same thing, that if we get the right products out financially, we would be surprised by the take rate on this new Indian who's actually not of the old saving economy, who doesn't want to save or build assets. He wants to build experiences, and hence, I genuinely think that we are just knocking the door right now.
Actually, on that point, right, and I'll cover the how maybe tourism is shaping up in a bit. But if you see the trend, right, earlier you needed the money and is only when you would buy the product, and it started with consumer goods probably, where you said, okay, I can buy a 41, but can I take an affordability product and buy a 50-inch TV? And that is where the aspiration was. And you didn't see it coming to travel as much because it was still discretionary. People said that, let me save for travel, let me not upfront borrow money, and that is what affordability does, right? And spend on travel. We are seeing the shift in those numbers. There is very high adoption on EMI. And if the right set of products, as Rishi said, right, if we can unlock, which is, the need is that it needs to be wider in access and not limited to the 30, 40, 50 million people where credit is very easily accessible, because those people have credit cards, they can book and go. How do you make it accessible to the next 100 million people? I think that probably is the answer that we need to collectively figure. And how do you make it simple for users to adopt? And if that is done, I think the next big wave of travel will come from there. While these destinations are great, and of course they will remain as the top 5-6 destination in belief in the next couple of years also, what is interesting and encouraging to see is that, and we were talking of supply in the past, right? Like if you see Indigo started direct flights to Lambang, and you see the tourism. Like I have done 2 offsites in Langkawi in the last 2 years because there is a direct flight available, right? So I think a lot of more tourism can just be unlocked by unlocking the right supply. And people are there willing to explore. You look at Japan, you look at Vietnam. These were never there in the top list of anybody. But because nobody wants to do the most traditional things, and social media is educating people enough to say that these are the new offbeat places that you should be going, we will see a lot more emerge as upcoming tourist destinations, which will allow Indians to explore a very, very different part of the world. Similarly, in domestic, I don't think people, like Rishi mentioned, right, don't see domestic as the aspirational travel. But if you look at tourism, your religious-based tourism, if you see some of the offbeat paths that earlier never existed are coming in to be the deemed destination of folks in general.
Shorter, Vikas, but definitely need your thoughts, both outbound and emerging domestic destinations.
Yeah, I don't think the data will be very different in the sense that the patterns and trends that we have seen from all of us. But because they covered a large part of things, I will talk about one or two things that probably didn't get covered. So, summary: when you are traveling, obviously aspiration is all there. We are all aligned on that. Now, how do you solve for that aspiration? Instagram gives you the inspiration.
Correct.
We all know how the inspirations are being driven. You then finally decide on a destination. Is there a direct flight is the first question. Direct flight solves that, supply is anyways coming in. Second is, do I have a passport? Before that is passport. So passport growth is absolutely growing, you're saying, and it will continue to grow. So I have a passport, I have a flight there. Third thing is, is it a visa-free? You mentioned about visa-free. And then, okay, I have decided everything, how do I buy it? And from where I buy it? Even if it is coming to OT. So affordability, and obviously consumer internet companies were the e-commerce companies were the pioneer in doing this. And since I have some experience there, so I can talk about it. So it was the biggest lever, and travel is getting into that. The third thing is payments. I think that's where I'll touch upon more. So payments is something EMI we talked about, and credit is the next big growth lever. So people earlier used to take credit to show off something. Now, show off is a little exaggerated word, but you understand. Okay, मेरे पास TV पड़ा है, I can show it. I have a car, I have a house, because it gives me a good feeling. Everybody else around have a perceived value of mine that, okay, this is what I own. But now travel is self. It is obviously going on Instagram as well, but it is about self-satisfaction that, okay, I have been able to do that. That example was absolutely fantastic, right? That cab driver is trying to go to Switzerland. So I think that is where. But payments is the next big unlock, where either through credit, and the second is, how are you able to pay to that destination? UPI will play a great, great role there. Amazing role. I will tell you, like, when payments work, it is invisible, right? You don't even realize payments work. But when they don't work, they are painfully visible. They are painfully visible. So if you are able to solve that, then I have traveled to a lot of destinations where there is UPI is available and all that. You don't worry. You don't fear. You don't have anxiety that what is the forex, what is this, how will I carry, khatam ho gaya to kya karenge? All that fear is not there. So I think these 4 or 5 things will unlock value to a tremendous level, and I think we are going in that right direction. These numbers are very small in my mind in the next 5 years. This will crazily grow.
Last final thought, Anupji, real short.
Short one. Probably I will not rely too much on the data, because data is good to look at. It's growing. But look at what we are sitting into. We are going to have 2 new airports, additional terminals in all major metros. And we are expecting any time upgradation of bilaterals with international carriers. These are the factors we have not seen in the last 10 years. So the key point is connectivity. Once we have a connectivity sorted out, then the rest of the things fall in place automatically. If you see, almost all the places what you mentioned, the visa is quite easy, right? On arrival or e-visa or whatever. So key is connectivity. Visa will fall into line. Countries are keen to get Indian tourists in their own country. Everybody is actually selling it. We have seen it in a session before. I am very bullish. These numbers will be dwarfed in next 10 years with more passports, more visa, more disposable income class, more exposure to social media, especially Instagram. In fact, I was reading 40% of young travelers are influenced by Instagram. You mentioned something about religious tourism. I was surprised at the data that in India, 60% of the traffic is actually because of religious tourism.
Prayagraj, the biggest cohort
because then it continues, and it's not only within India. There are people from outside India also coming to it. So these are the growth drivers, and a flight to operate out of India has to work both ways, right? So there has to be an outbound demand as well as inbound demand coming in. So we are in a good space, very positive, I think, compared to any other country. I think we're in the best possible, and of course, India is well recognized. People are making it easy for us to travel in terms of visa. Payment bit, it's very important and it's one of the most important. Buy now, pay later, right? It's helping a lot. In fact, once I'm back in Delhi, we want to announce buy now, pay later as an extension of our product to the market. So these things are happening. We are sorting ourselves out, making travel easy, post-booking automation, data push to our partners so that they are able to present their product in a much more optimized way. A lot of things are happening. From technology point of view, we are not challenged. We are the best in the world today. So overall, in a very sweet spot right now.
All right, so we are only halfway there, but we need to be mindful of our time. Guys, what a superb panel. Vikas, Manjri, Rishi. Anupji, thank you.